Let's Go Green, sponsored by AirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
Hello, and you are very welcome to this week's episode of Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. I hope you are safe and well as you tune into the show, and thank you to all of you who got in touch with me after last week's episode. Well, we have a lovely show lined up for you, I think, if I do say so myself this week. We will be checking in on the problem that is Sika deer. We're also looking at other ways to mind, or should I say reuse our wedding dresses. I say our when I have not had one of those. But hey, would you sell your wedding dress or would you rather it gather dust in a cupboard? So we're going to be talking to organisers of an event coming up in the next couple of weeks here in the Midlands to get more people to sell their wedding dresses and make it all a bit more sustainable and affordable, because apparently I'm reliably informed they're rather expensive items to buy. But first things first, we are not yet in spring, but you're heading towards spring. We sometimes talk about birds and nesting season, and I've yet to have this conversation before. We have to talk about birds and fire safety. Have you cleaned your fireplace? Have you cleaned your chimney yet this year? Well, joining us now on Let's Go Green is Pat Hunt, and Pat is the Vice Chair of Fire Engineers. Thank you so much for joining the programme.
Thank you very much, Aisling.
Now, Pat, look, it's New Year, it's time of year when people start doing the old spring clean, maybe start new routines. But we are actually heading towards bird nesting season, and if we're not actually using our open fireplaces in particular, or fireplaces in our homes, it can be, if it's accessible to wildlife, the chimney can be a nice place to create a nest, can't it?
It can indeed, and the simplest way of preventing it is by putting a cowl on your chimney pot itself. But that being said, if it's a case that you haven't cleaned your chimney for Christmas, I think it would be a good piece of advice to do that, because for the simple fact of the matter is, it's amazing how, as you said yourself, how during nesting season, debris, bits of branches, God knows what, can be stuffed into a chimney, and then when you light the fire, and put a fuel into the fire, and of course light it, and it takes off, then the smoke has nowhere to go. And equally, if the smoke is hot or there are embers attached, it'll rise up through the chimney breast and ultimately make contact with this debris, and then suddenly you'll have a grand chimney fire, and then requesting the services of the fire brigade.
Well, I mentioned to Pat before we came on air, I was one of those people over the Christmas period who had to call out the fire service because we decided to light a fireplace that hadn't been used in quite a while, and we'd forgotten that we hadn't cleaned the chimney. And when I say the words terrifying, I am not underestimating. Like, Pat, chimney fires, I'm not sure we take them seriously enough, but they can be very dangerous, can't they?
They can, and it really depends on the type of house and the date of the house itself. The older houses would have the floor joists going straight into the chimney breast. So if your chimney does catch fire, then there's every risk that the floor joists on the upper floors may actually catch fire as a result. There's no substitute for cleaning the chimney, and the NAS statistics for 2024, for example, showed a remarkable steadiness in the number of chimney fires nationally. And that reflects a number of things. The fact that people are still using solid fuel to heat their homes. A lot of the people in the Midlands use turf, briquettes, timber, whatever, to keep the house warm and also to heat the water. And it's a necessity that you do clean your chimney on a regular basis. And the older the house, the more at risk it is from a chimney fire, particularly if the floor joists go straight into the chimney breast. And I've seen situations where significant fires that started off as a chimney fire developed into a fully flown house fire in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, it's the speed of it. Like when we were waiting for the fire service to arrive, now it was maybe 15 minutes, but my God, it felt like hours. And it's frightening how fast these things can take hold. A lot of houses nowadays, Pat, they might have maybe a traditional open fireplace, But you've also got gas fires, you've got maybe a pellet stove, maybe an oil burning stove. It can be, like, there's a lot of different types. So are there any rules here? Like if you've got a chimney or a flue, does it need to be cleaned once a year regardless of what it is?
Well, I agree with you in the case that if you have a gas boiler or an oil burner, it needs to be serviced annually. That's the first thing I'd say. That's the first bit of advice for two reasons. One, it gives you the peace of mind that the thing has been actually serviced, but also as well, it's like servicing the car. It will always run better after a service and an inspection. If you have an open fire, depending on the use of the fire, if you have an old style range, for example, and it's in daily use, then we'd recommend that you would have your chimney cleaned at least twice a year.
Oh.
If it's the case if you have an open fire, and it's occasional use and in use during the winter months from October to the end of April, you're looking at having it cleaned once a year. One thing I'd say though, in relation to house insurance, and I think actually this is vitally important, is that you check with your house insurance policy to ensure that you have fire brigade cover. It must be attached to your, if, say, for example, you have had the fire brigade yourself, and it is a cost, and you will be billed for a call out because chimney fires are preventable. And the fire service nationally in Ireland take a very, very dim view of the whole chimney fire epidemic. But again, to protect yourself, to ensure that you're not hit with a massive bill, it's important to check with your house insurance to ensure that your policy covers fire brigade call out. And it usually covers, depending on your policy, for fire brigade call out to, I think, a maximum of €1,000. But again, that would depend very much on your individual insurance broker.
Okay, that's a really valuable point. And just when you do bring up cost, I know it ran through my mind too when I was calling 999. Like, there can be, it's not as bad as it might not be as bad as I think. I might not need the fire brigade. And it's a bit of a case of, well, if you suspect a stroke, you call 999 and you ask for an ambulance. But I know sometimes it can be a barrier. People are sometimes afraid to pick up the phone and to call for assistance because perhaps they're afraid of the cost.
No, I wouldn't advise that at all.
Okay.
It's something that relates back to the housing crisis we find ourselves in. It's far better to have the fire brigade on scene dealing with this fire at the early stages than waiting for it to manifest and get bigger and bigger and bigger and magnify. And at that stage, as I said earlier on, a chimney fire can progress into a house fire in the matter of minutes. And considering we're in the middle of a housing crisis where housing is at a premium here in Ireland, you have to ask yourself, if you lost your house overnight, what would you do? Where would you go? Would you rent? Will there be any place to rent? It's never been more important to look after our houses because, for the simple fact of the matter is, people who own our houses or own their houses are in an incredibly, what can I describe it as, an incredibly advantageous position in comparison to the younger generation who basically can't afford to get on the property ladder. Equally, as we get older, it's very, very difficult for us to make changes and move. So my attitude is, or my advice would be, look, do the simple things. Protect yourselves as much as possible by having a working smoke alarm in the home. So if a fire does break out tonight, that you're adequately alerted. Similarly, if you do discover a fire at home, no matter how big, how small, get the fire brigade out, because if they can deal with it early, they can prevent it from growing. And that they can also prevent the damage from progressing to it can be minor damage to moderate damage to severe damage in the space of approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah. So it's vitally important to get the brigade out as early as possible for that early intervention to save your property and save your home.
And I have to say they were absolutely lovely to deal with, even though we did drag them out on Christmas week and they may have had a few better things to be doing with their time. But I'm very glad they made the call. They were absolute gentlemen to deal with all of them. Pat, a new phenomenon that I'm seeing, because apparently I'm now addicted to TikTok. I'm not quite sure how it happened. But I'm seeing these videos of people coming up with, oh my God, did you buy an air fryer? Is it plugged in all the time? Or I bought X or Y new electronically gadget on the likes of TikTok Shop, on the likes of Temu, or one of these international shopping sites. There is that concern when we live in a globalised society, and that's all wonderful and everything. But are we being careful enough about the electronic devices we're bringing into our homes?
I don't think we are. I think we're looking at how much we're saving, what we're getting, and how cheaply we bought it, rather than looking and checking whether or not it's safe for use. The air fryer is a very, very good example of buying a product over on the internet where it's relatively cheap. Packaging is, the postage is minimal, and then you get the device at home. You plug it in, it works, it's fine, but you've no assurance that it has been tested to meet European requirements or British standard requirements. The European requirement would be a case where you'd have all your products marked with a CE mark. The British standard would be a standard BS mark. And these, if you look at most of your appliances around the home, there will be a CE or a BS mark on most of them, like a toaster, an iron, electric kettle, or whatever, to say that it meets the minimum requirements for sale within the European Union, and indeed in relation to for sale in Britain as well. If you're buying from vendors outside of the European Union, there is that risk that there is no testing, or should I say, it is tested to a point, but whether those tests are as exhaustive as those in Europe, there's a big question mark over that. So I'd advise people, if they are buying something online, just to be careful and just check the product to make sure that it is actually fit for purpose, number one, and secondly, safe for use, number two. Another thing I'd say as well is this phenomenon of charging stuff overnight, whether it be mobile phones, tablets, or any other electronic device. If you're charging your phone or your laptop or tablet or whatever device you have, don't leave it plugged in overnight. Just it's like anything else. It's a lithium-ion battery. A lithium-ion battery fire is extremely hot, extremely fast, and you can check out the videos on YouTube or any other social media channel there, and you can see just how damaging those kind of fires can be, how explosive those fires can be, and as well, just how dangerous the whole thing is once it actually kicks off, and how difficult it is to extinguish.
And like we even saw there before Christmas, there was a rubbish truck that went on fire and brought the M50 to a standstill, which brought the rest of the country to a standstill, because we all connect into the M50 road, where like there's these things are really dangerous. And I think we're all being a little bit, and myself included, lackadaisical about it in some ways. Pat, you mentioned when we spoke before we came on air, induction hobs. Now, I know induction hobs are they're the modern type of hob. If you're getting a new kitchen, it's more than likely going to be an induction hob. And I have one myself. They're very handy, very nice to cook on. A little bit annoying if you spill a bit of water and they turn themselves off because of safety, which can be irritating, but I understand the safety need for it, Pat. I do, as you laugh at me there. But tea towels and induction hobs, apparently you tell me, they don't mix.
No, they don't. And this is from personal experience as well. And it doesn't necessarily apply just to induction hobs. It can apply to a standard gas hob as well. Like, you could be cooking, you'll have the tea towel, you know yourself, you have the hob, you have the sink. It's within kind of one arm's length away from you. You could get a phone call, you could be distracted, you could have a child looking for your attention, you could have somebody calling to you from another room, you go in to check something, there might be something on the television, whatever. And before you know it, you can smell something burning, and it's usually a case where the tea towel has come into contact with either the flame or the jet of the gas cooker, or alternatively has just come a little bit too close to the induction hob, and boom, you've got a kitchen fire. Now, depending on how early you get to it, it can be very, very small and easily extinguished, to something that, again, requires the fire brigade to call out. So what I'd suggest is be very, very careful with cooking and cooking hobs, particularly tea towels or kitchen towels, anything like that is relatively flammable. It will take off. There's no doubt about that, because they're generally dry products, and once they come into naked flame, they will take off. Also, as well, just be very, very careful about induction hobs, particularly if you have young children. It's a case that while the induction hob is turned off, it still contains a certain amount of residual heat. And there's usually a little LED on the actual hob to show that, yes, it's still hot. But if you're 5 or 6 or 7, you're not really rushing at that. You're usually on your way to see what's on the stove, what's near the sink or whatever. And there is a risk that if you do put your hand in it, you will get a particularly bad burn. So again, it's just overall kitchen safety. Just be aware of them. The dangers there. As I said, cooking is always notorious. Another thing about kitchens as well is there's a huge trend at the moment to run large appliances, like quite large white goods, the washing machine, the dishwasher, or indeed the tumble dryer overnight. And I was talking to Will and Sinead on the morning show a number of years ago in relation to this. And while it is popular and you do avail of night saver electricity, the reason why the ESB like you to run these appliances at night is because they are particularly, I won't say wasteful, but they use a lot of electricity to heat the elements to keep them going. But my own experience of this is the fact that if they are left on overnight, considering, like, say, for example, you have a tumble dryer, your clothes are made of man-made fibers, the majority of them. And you know yourself that if you expose any sort of nylon or polyester or anything to flame, it will take off in a
Yeah.
heartbeat. And if it's a case that you have a tumble dryer going overnight that's been drying clothes, producing a huge amount of heat, and these fabrics are over warm, or there's a short in the actual unit itself, the whole thing can go up in a heartbeat. And there's very little you can do other than get the fire brigade out.
And it could be argued that if they're being used and they're not being supervised because you're off in the land of Nod, you're not taking due care, and all of that has other consequences as well, Pat. So then, practical steps. Okay, we mentioned earlier, like, if you haven't done it already, because let's be honest, it's been a very mild winter. So for a lot of people, they might not have lit their fire in the last number of weeks. So get the chimney cleaned, get someone qualified out to do that for you, get the boiler serviced. Should we have a fire blanket, a fire extinguisher in our homes? What should we have in case of emergencies?
I think that the simplest thing to do is, first of all, make sure you have working smoke alarms. That's the first thing. Secondly, then, if you're elderly and you have problem hearing, the normal piece of advice is that you would have 2 smoke alarms, one in the downstairs, one in the upstairs, or whatever. If you're elderly or hard of hearing or on medication that promotes you to have a solid night's sleep, then put an additional smoke alarm in the bedroom, because, like anything else, it will wake you. It's just a simple thing, very, very low cost measure, but it will give you that extra piece of advice. If you are of a particular age and you are concerned about fire, talk to your local fire service. Alternatively, as well, bring your mobile phone to bed with you. Have it charged to about 40%. That's all you need. And in the event that, say, for example, you felt unwell, you could call the doctor. If you felt unsafe, you can call the Gardaí. And if you felt that there was a fire on, you could hear your alarm going, you could ring the fire brigade. Similarly, a small torch beside the bed is invaluable in the event that you feel unsafe, or indeed you have a power outage. At least you have a bit of light to actually get up and down the stairs. I wouldn't be a huge fan of domestic fire extinguishers. The simple fact of the matter is, once they're brought in and bought in the shop, they're never looked at, never tested, and all fire extinguishers should be tested once a year. And the other thing about it is, you may buy a fire extinguisher, but would you know how to use it? And the fire extinguisher you bought, would it have universal use in the sense that it would be useful for every fire that you would have in the house? Or just, say, for example, class A material, which is burning wood, burning papers, burning organic material. So again, I would focus on the safety aspect of fire safety at home, not the kind of use of a fire blanket, use of a fire extinguisher, but a working smoke alarm. Simple steps, even closing the doors at night. As you go up to bed at night, close the kitchen door, close the sitting room door, because the 2 areas have the 2 biggest fire loads. Make sure you have a working smoke alarm. Have your mobile phone charged at around 40%. Bring it with you if you're particularly concerned. And if you're feeling unwell, as I said, it serves a number of purposes. But the other thing, as I said at the very, very outset, is the use of, or the making sure that your house insurance does cover you for fire brigade call-outs. It's invaluable just to check it with your insurance broker or your insurance agent to make sure you have that level of cover. Other than that, as we said, apart from making sure that whatever electronics you buy have the appropriate marking, and making sure that those markings are C or BS markings, you're generally fine. And my pet hate, of course, don't run appliances overnight. That's basically it.
Well, Pat, I'm off to check every appliance in the house and to see if it has one of those CE marks. I suspect there's 1 or 2 that may have come from a certain social media platform and that shall remain nameless. But anyway, Pat Hunt, who is the Vice Chair of the Institute of Fire Engineers here in Ireland. Pat, you are, thank you for your time, and thanks once again for joining us on Let's Go Green.
No problem. Thank you, Ashley.
We'll be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103, and we're joined now by Bronwyn Walsh. And Bronwyn is the event manager at Ballintubbert Gardens and House. Bronwyn, you are very welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Aisling. I'm delighted to be on with you to be able to talk about our lovely event.
Now, Bronwyn, you've got this big event coming up. You are aiming to have the largest pre-loved wedding dress sale in the country. So, like, I am told, I have it on good authority, wedding dresses in themselves are very expensive items, and a lot of thought, a lot of travel goes into picking out the right one, and maybe a bit of stress in around getting it fitting correctly and all of that. You have your big day, you have your beautiful photographs, hopefully everything goes to plan. And then what with the dress?
And then it goes back into the lovely box it came in, and it sits in your wardrobe, or it goes to your mammy's wardrobe, or it goes to your attic. And you think, oh, I'll take that out and have a look at it in 6 months' time. And then you take it out in 20 years' time. You try to put it on and it doesn't fit. And then you just wrap it up again, all depressed, because you used to be a size 6 when you got married, but you're not anymore because you're 50. So, look, we all have that. I have my wet dresses at home sitting in the press as well for 25 years now. And I wouldn't even dare try to take it out again. But wedding dresses have become so expensive now for brides. And young couples these days have enough challenges as it is in finding, you know, a nice venue, a nice sustainable venue, something that's not going to break the bank. And then they're faced... The brides go to the shop, it's 3,000 euro, it's 2,000 euro for this dress. It's they're only ever going to wear once.
It's such an expense. And like, I know I would be of the mindset when it comes... Now, look, I love featuring fashion items on the show because I quite enjoy my personal style. But I would be of a mindset that you invest in quality, you will get like 10, 15, 20 years worth out of clothing if it's a good quality item. But something like a wedding dress, you can't go and wear it again the following weekend because it's so obviously your wedding dress. And then there's the sentimental piece, you know, you might not want it to be altered because maybe that's taking away from it or whatever it might be, just for some emotive reason. Talk to me then about selling a pre-loved wedding dress, because I know for some people buying a vintage wedding dress would be absolutely right up their alley. But we have to first put the old wedding dresses up for sale. Yeah.
So, look, we are hosting this beautiful event in Ballintubbert in the pavilion, and these past brides, have the opportunity to bring their dress along. We have four meeting days where you can come to bring your dress along for us to sell. We'll do the hard work for you. You know, get it out of the wardrobe. Let's release some of the capital in it. Let's reuse. Let somebody else relove these beautiful quality dresses at a price that might make their life a little bit easier and make them be able to afford that beautiful, heavy, rich, you know, maybe designer dress or your accessories or your bridesmaids dresses, whatever you want to sell, and make the dress that you love so much, let somebody else love it as well, because these dresses should never be put away. They too much work gone into them, you know. And this way, people come along to Ballintubbert Gardens and House in Athy on the 28th of March, is from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. when we're having the sale. Get your bargain and take that dress away and make it your own. We'll have somebody there who will be able to advise on whether it can be adjusted to your size.
Okay,
so we'll have a dressmaker on site just to give some advice, you know, because we don't know, you know, the average Joe Soap's not going to know. And then you can touch them, you can feel them, you can try them on, you know, bring your bridesmaids with you, have a little twirl, have a little walk around, you know, and see it. So many brides these days, because of the cost of these dresses, are turning to online shopping, online Chinese websites. And the dresses look beautiful in the pictures, and they look amazing. And then when they get them home, the quality is just not there. It's just not the same. It's literally just not the same. So we have two levels to this, obviously. We've got the brides who want to release the capital in the dress, who don't, want to hold it in the wardrobe, taking up space for the next 25 years. So we have 4 places they can come to. They can come to the Button Factory, the Curveball venue in the Button Factory on the 2nd of February. From 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have the Dunraven Arms in Adair in Limerick, the other side of the country, on the 4th of February from 10 to 4. We go north then to Dundalk. We are upstairs in Macara on Roden Place in Dundalk from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then we are back in County Laois on the 11th of February from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for anybody to come and bring their dresses to us. We'll take them, catalogue them, take a photograph of them, get all your details, and you can go away. Let us do the hard work. We'll do the marketing. We'll do the selling,
And Bronwyn, tell me then, because as you mentioned there, for a lot of people, the wedding dress will have been in a box or hung up in a wardrobe. Do they need to bring it to the dry cleaners first, or give it a once over and make sure it's still in wearable condition? What kind of standards are you expecting?
Yeah, well, we won't take dresses that are ripped or in bad condition, right? We want quality. We want quality. We want beautiful dresses. You don't necessarily have to dry clean them. If your dress is relatively clean, I wouldn't be too worried about dry cleaning it. But what I will say about dry cleaning is it will make it more saleable against the next dress that isn't dry cleaned. Mm-hmm. So it will catch the attention quicker if it is clean. Right. That's the only advice I can give to brides. But we do understand it is expensive to get these dry cleaned. So it's not a prerequisite, but it is, I suggest it would be a good idea to do if you can afford it.
Look, clean, dry and in a wearable condition.
Yeah. And we love vintage. So all these ladies of my vintage, bring along your 60s, 70s, 80s dresses. They're so retro and they're so cool these days.
And
bring them along.
Yeah. And any brides that I see on TikTok, they're all talking about getting a vintage wedding dress, and they want to know the story behind it and where it came from and all of that. They don't want something anonymous and generic from a big box company. And Bronwyn, then for the brides to be who are coming on the day, perhaps with their mum or with their sister or the bridesmaids, will it be an occasion for them? Because I know sometimes maybe expectations might be that there'll be a little bit of prosecco or a little bit of
certainly will.
A little bit of an atmosphere when we're picking out the dress.
Yeah. Well, they can make a full day of it, right? You arrive at Ballintubbert, we are 14 acres of stunning organic gardens. For the people to come and enjoy. We'll be in the pavilion. There will be prosecco or no secco for the drivers, most important, or a cup of tea and coffee. They can come and take their time. A lot of brides have to make an appointment for bridal dress, and they get half an hour. They're rushed in, rushed out, and that's it. Come, take your time. We are working on a first come, first served basis. So, if you want to come early to get the best of choice, feel free. You don't have to book. There's no entrance fee. Just come along. Like I said, bring all your bridesmaids and just enjoy the opulence and the beauty of Ballintubbert Gardens and House. Bring a picnic. If it's the 28th of March, the gardens are going to be in full spring. They'll just be spectacular at that time. Come bring a picnic and sit and eat and, enjoy your day.
It is a beautiful venue. I was delighted to be invited to attend the dinner for the Climate Cocktail Club there in the autumn, and the pavilion. And it was just the atmosphere. Yeah. So I'm not in the market for a bridal gown, but I would definitely recommend if our listeners pop down if you are. And as Bronwyn says, get there early and bring a picnic, be there to enjoy the day and enjoy the atmosphere of the gardens. So remind us, the 28th of March from 10 a.m.
Yeah, 28th of March from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. For the dress sale, and then Dublin the 2nd of February. Limerick, 4th of February, Dundalk, the 9th of February, or Laois on the 11th of February for you to sell your dresses. All this information is available on our Instagram at Ballintubbert. If anybody is in the car and just can't write it down right now, or on our Facebook page, or they can email me at events@ballintubbert.com if anybody has any questions at all. I'm delighted to answer any queries, because it is a big step to sell your wedding dress, but I think it's an amazing thing to do for the environment as well, because there's so much fabric that goes into these dresses and so much hard work. It's just such a lovely thing to see them being enjoyed and being used again, and as we call them, loved again,
Yeah, and look, I totally understand why you might want to hold on to something for sentimental reasons, but it's not doing anybody any good sitting in a box in the wardrobe. So why not let somebody else enjoy it and appreciate it and start their new life story with it? Well, Bronwyn Walsh of Ballintubbert Gardens and House. Bronwyn is available on events@ballintubbert.com. If you want to have any questions or you want a reminder of the dates, you can check out at Ballintubbert on Instagram as well. Bronwyn, thank you so much for joining us on Let's Go Green today.
Thank you so much, Aisling. We hope to see you at the Clocktrail Club again now in September, on 16th September again this year.
Fingers crossed, all going well. I'll be there, Bronwyn. Well, we will be back to find out more about the Sika deer crisis. Stay tuned to Let's Go Green.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Well, we have a very varied show this week. We've gone from fire safety to donating or selling, I should say, your wedding dress at the Pre-Loved Wedding Dress event in Ballintubbert coming up in March. And now we're turning to deer and Sika deer more specifically. I'm joined now by Caroline O'Doherty of the Irish Times. Caroline, you're very welcome back to the programme.
Thank you.
Caroline, Sika deer, there's concern about them, but I suppose we have deer across the country, very popular in the Midlands, very popular up in Dublin around Phoenix Park. We might admire them from a distance. We might curse them if we come across them on the roads because they can be a bit of a traffic hazard. But talk to me about them and the challenges that the Sika deer are posing in particular.
Yeah, we have a lot of deer in this country. And we have three main species. We have the red deer, which are considered a native deer. We have the Sika deer, which came from Asia. They were brought 1860 by one of the biggest estate owners. Because deer, they were ornamental in some ways. They kept the lawns lovely and neat and trim in other ways, and they were also available for hunting parties. And we have an awful lot of Sika deer now, and we also have fallow deer, which are also an import, if you like. The difficulty is they don't have any natural predators, and the only people who can kind of keep the numbers, restrict their numbers, are hunters. People who shoot for pleasure, for meat, for all of that. And we are shooting about 80,000 deer a year.
80,000?
80,000 deer a year.
Wow.
About 70,000 now. It's gone up maybe about 10 or 20,000 in the last couple of years, in the last few years. But we're regular hunters, people who shoot for a hobby and for venison, for meat. They have licenses, and they have literally reported their returns, their kills, by 70,000. The last full year on record is 2024, and then about another 10,000 are cold, if you like, because they're specifically causing an issue in a particular area under a slightly different license, but it's the same thing. It's just slightly different seasons. There's a bit more flexibility if you have a license to kill a problem deer, if you like. So that's 80,000, and still, even though all the experts in the country will tell you we don't know how many deer we have, we know from the amount of damage to forestry and to crops as well. We know from the number of road accidents, and there are times in the year when, and there's a kind of a network of people who are kind of trained to respond to deer killed and humane dispatch of deer who may be mortally injured but are not dead. And there are times they say, look, there are certain patches around the country where they're literally at times of the year called out like every second day. So we know from that, and we know from the hunters themselves, and we know from farmers that there's just that 80,000 a year of kills is not making a dent in the number. They're reproducing a lot. And the difficulty is, as I say, there's commercial forestry, and you can only put up so many fences. And there's farmers' land, there's golf courses and general land, public land. There's rewilding efforts, and there's just nothing more attractive now to a deer than a beautiful shoot of a lovely, fresh, native, sapling. And again, you're going to spend as much on the fencing as you are on the actual planting. It just seems a bit of a waste. And then you have roads. You have, genuine roads.
And the roads thing is, like, I know, like, so I grew up in Tullamore, on the outskirts of the town, right near Charleville Woods, where you'd have deer constantly. And I remember even learning how to drive, it being one of the things I was afraid of. I was like, oh my God, what do I do if a deer comes? Just these things when you have these irrational fears when you're learning how to do something new. But in the case of the deer, it's not all that irrational, because like they can cause serious damage to vehicles, but also to human life.
Oh yeah, if one jumped out at you, and they jump out at quite a speed, you're either going to brake, swerve, or collide, and none of that's good. And yes, you might expect, when a roadway is created or widened or becomes more busy near woodland, but I mean, I live in Bray in County Wicklow. It's very urban. It's practically Dublin. And there's kind of grass verges and small clumps of trees where the various road network has, left a bit of greenery around, really small clumps. And there you go, leaving the kids down the school run in the morning, and there's a deer poking out of this little clump, so they're getting very urban in places, and say they're not going to survive, and potentially, humans are not going to survive if there's an encounter in the wrong kind of way. So it's an issue. It's a big issue. You mentioned Sika there. The reason they're in the news is because they are non-native, so they're actually on our invasive species list, our national invasive species list. But we don't do anything major about them, apart from sort of trying to manage the numbers as part of the overall deer management in the country. But what happened last year was the European Union put them on a list of what they call alien invasive species of union concern. And that means that the EU wants all member states to take action. So you either got to prevent this animal getting into your country if it's not already there. If it's reasonably new to the country, you got to eradicate it. If you have it and it's fairly well established, you still have to take action. You have to get the numbers down. So we kind of fall into that third category. And it came as a bit of a surprise, I suppose. This was actually a decision made in July of last year. And there had been some campaigning up to the decision, which was expected to be made. And then people were saying, well, the decision is due to be made. And then the decision seemed to be made in the dead of summer, if you like. And it didn't really get noticed. And so last week, the Department of Housing, which looks after our sort of wildlife legislation and that kind of thing, and the National Parks and Wildlife Service, which looks after the implementation of that legislation, put out a public notice advising public landowners, etc., that the Sika deer is now on this alien invasive species of union concern list, and action has to be taken. Which raises the question: what action?
Yeah, exactly. And like, if you are. Well, there's if we have 3 types of deer in the country and you happen to be a landowner, but you're not an expert in deer, you have to first be sure that, it's a Sika deer as opposed to a native deer, so that you're protected and on all of that and you're doing things in the right way. But what action is being suggested, or is there any support available for people who own this land that is being populated by Sika?
Well, first of all, the country has sort of 18 months to put together a package of measures that they're going to implement under this EU regulation. So we're that's maybe a work in progress. As it happened last year, the Department of Agriculture, this issue falls between various departments and agencies, because of the pressure from farmers and foresters, put together outsourced it actually, a national deer management service, and they were in the process of building up last year. So they built up local deer management units, if you like. And what they've been doing, they've only been in place really for about 5 or 6 months. And what they're doing is they are sort of matchmaking of landowners and local hunters, people who shoot.
Right.
So that there'll be sort of a more targeted approach to this, so that the farmers can identify and say, look, I'm plagued with the animals here, there, or whatever, and the hunters then can go in. But say, to the extent that's already happening, those kind of local relationships
Yeah.
tend to already be established. So how we would ramp that up is not entirely clear. There's an important issue too, that if we did increase the numbers that are killed, we don't have a huge number of butchers who are ready to deal with the carcasses. We do sell some venison in Ireland, not an awful lot. We do export some, and obviously people who shoot and have the butchering skills themselves are allowed to keep the meat for themselves. But that would require sort of ramping up of that infrastructure. There's, storage, packaging, dispatch, butchering, all of that. Fencing is another issue. I'm tempted to revive people's memory of a certain minister who a few years back suggested we bring back wolves, and spent most of his time then in government,
defending that statement.
Criticism. Eamon Ryan, if you're listening, you might be saying, I told you this would be a good idea. But look, that's very unlikely to be on the list and this management measures that they come up with. But it would be, I suppose, a natural deterrent and a natural way of keeping the numbers down. But no, I really don't see that they're going to suggest bringing back wolves. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because, bear in mind, like, we tend to think of, well, animals are, wildlife is encroaching into our areas or into our urban areas, the same as the urban foxes. We should probably realize it's actually because we're encroaching more and more on their territory, because, the population is getting bigger. We're building more houses everywhere, so these kind of encounters and difficulties, and we're trying to do rewilding, of course, as well. So these kind of things, I suppose they bring the issue to a head a bit more than maybe they were in the past. But definitely, definitely an issue.
And one, like, it's, as you say, and you've outlined it so well, very real practical consequences around, like, damage to habitats and potentially humans in terms of traffic collisions. But are there any other consequences from an EU level if we don't hit this 18-month target to have a plan in place and actually get these numbers down?
Well, look, every time Ireland is often in breach of EU directives and regulations, particularly on environmental issues and wildlife.
I shouldn't laugh, but I really shouldn't laugh, Caroline. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's laughable how frequently we are in breach of things like this.
It is, and these enforcement issues tend to go on forever. We get warning letters, and then we get a formal notice, and we get a final notice, and then they might refer it to the European Court of Justice, and it goes back and forward. And then eventually there might be fines and so on. And even then, we still might not come up with a solution. Look, there are, I suppose, more pressing issues. There's also, kind of a growing concern. We have a big problem with TB in cattle in Ireland, and there's been badger eradication, not eradication, I beg your pardon, badger culling, targeted badger culling going on for a long time. And it's not because they presumed it was badgers. And that's not getting the TB numbers down. And a huge amount of money has been spent on this, on the TB eradication. There's now, I suppose, people are asking, is it more about deer? Are deer passing it on?
Okay.
Because they're wandering through, deer move around a lot, so they're quite happy to wander through grazing grounds of cattle. So that's definitely an issue too. So sometimes when there's a financial consequences close to home, maybe it spurs action a bit more. So farmers and landowners are saying, actually, we think that even vets, you're perplexed with the TB issue in Ireland. They're saying, look, it could well be deer. Maybe that's what'll spur the action a bit more. So, but I just think it's the combination of issues. It is, as I say, I've seen them on the side of the road, practically, and people always say, it's hard, particularly Sika deer. I've read the descriptions of them. They're really, really shy, and it'd be very hard to selectively go after a Sika because you're not sure what kind of deer it is, and there was a deer staring me in the eyes, feet away, recently, as I'm looking at him, standing on the grass verge, looking at the traffic going by. So, if they're getting more urbanized as well, it's we're looking the problem straight in the eye here, and I just think they are going to have to. They, as being the authorities, are going to have to do something. And I know people don't like the idea of culling deer, but there is a concern that they're being pushed out into areas just because they need grazing grounds. They're looking for breeding grounds. And if they get into poor condition because there's more competition between themselves for grazing ground, then they're ill and not thriving. So it's not a healthy then deer population. So there's that to be taken into consideration too.
And then potentially, if they are the cause of the spread of disease like TB, like that's not good either. So like something clearly has to be done, you would hope, in the most humane way possible. But as you say, at this moment in time, it's very much a wait and see what this plan is going to look like and how these localised groups are going to be formalised perhaps in the coming weeks and months. Caroline O'Doherty of the Irish Times, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. We will be back after the break.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.
You're listening to Let's Go Green here on Midlands 103. Now, a quick reminder about the sale of the pre-loved wedding dresses in Ballintubbert Gardens and House on the 28th of March. If you want to find out the full details about it, if you perhaps have a wedding dress in the wardrobe that you'd like to, as Bronwyn put it, release the capital out of it, you can get in contact with Bronwyn, Walsh and the team on events@ballintubbert.com, or simply go to @Ballintubbert on Instagram and you'll find all the details there. And now, of course, since my conversation with Caroline O'Doherty of the Irish Times, we had the first case of the blue tongue virus discovered in Ireland, reported in the Republic of Ireland in a farm in County Wexford, which is clearly an extraordinarily worrying development. I think one of the striking things about it for me is the connection between it and the milder temperatures that we've been experiencing. My understanding of the blue tongue virus is that it's spread by midges, which tend to be more active between the months of April and November, when we have temperatures, generally speaking, of 12 degrees and more. But we're in January, after a mild winter, and heading towards spring, depending on which spring you follow, Celtic or meteorological. But either way, it has been unusually warm, and now we have this awful discovery of these 6 sick animals in County Wexford, and that, of course, is going to be causing concerns from both an environmental and agriculture perspective, but something we will keep a close eye on here on the show. If you missed my conversation around fire safety with retired Westmeath Fire Chief Pat Hunt, and of course now the co-chair of Ireland's Fire Safety Engineers, please do listen back to the start of the programme. I think it was a very valuable chat, and I know I certainly learned a few tips and tricks from Pat during the course of our conversation earlier. And I think I'll be looking at all my electronics in my house after this show to make sure that they all do have that very important CE mark. I'm afraid, though, that is all we have time for on this week's episode of the show. But just a quick reminder, if you missed that conversation that I mentioned with Pat, or of course Bronwyn or Caroline, or indeed any other episode of Let's Go Green, you can listen back to all of our shows on midlands103.com under the podcast section. Or if it's easier, you can follow us on your preferred podcast platform. If you are on Spotify, please do ring the bell on Let's Go Green with Aisling O'Rourke so that you're notified every time an episode goes live. And if you're feeling really generous and you enjoy what we do here on Let's Go Green, please do leave us a 5-star rating. Of course, this show is all about you, the community, and I love talking about issues that you want questions answered to, or even to raise awareness of efforts that are happening in the community. So if there is something that you would like to be profiled here on the programme, or the question that you'd like me to try and get some answers to, please do drop me a line, hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. So hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie, or you can email me through midlands103.com under the On Air Team section. Well, we have to wrap up the show, so I will be back in 2 weeks' time due to the bank holiday next week for the goddess Bridget. I hope you enjoy the festivities. I know there's a lot happening in Kildare and Dublin in particular, but I hope you do mark the occasion, and don't forget to put your brat breed out on the night before February 1st. Take care, stay safe, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks here on Let's Go Green on Midlands 103.
Let's Go Green, sponsored by EirGrid, managing and operating Ireland's electricity grid for a cleaner energy future. Check out airgrid.ie for more.